Hello everyone, and welcome back to Hagen Hauptbahnhof. If you saw the previous video, you'll have seen that I just drove from Finnentrop up to Hagen with the DB BR422 on the Ruhr Sieg Nord route. And now, we're going to, if the frame rate will hold, we're going to continue that run from Hagen here all the way to Wuppertal on Rhein-Ruhr Osten. And our train is the DB BR422, or rather a pair of 422s. So I think the only place you'll see that the single the 422 running on its own is probably between Oberbarmen and Wuppertal-Steinbeck. Right, now trying to set the destination display is a bit of a faff, because for some reason it gets confused with the destination display set up confused with the version from the Hauptstrecke Rhein-Ruhr or Duisburg to Bochum route, and I really don't get it. I can't understand why Dovetail have ended up in this situation where where you can't set the right destination display on the RRO, on the Wuppertal to Hagen version of the 422. Those door chimes are a bit loud. Should I have the window open or not? I don't know, but one thing I'll do is put the interior lights on. That's better. Right, this is, I should add that this is, today we're running an S8, or an S-Bahn Rhein-Ruhr S8 service towards, I think it's Mönchengladbach, but we're only going as far as Wuppertal-Steinbeck. And this is the exact same platform that I was where I pulled up in the 143 last time. In fact, I think that engine over there is another 143. One thing I never really realised about German geography until I got Rhein-Ruhr Osten and then more recently Ruhr Sieg Nord is just how varied Germany's geography can be. Because this part of the country between like Wuppertal and Finnentrop is incredibly hilly, and there's a lot of very narrow valleys around this area, and as a result, if I can get to the map view, right, and I can, yeah, you can see that there's the two different routes between Schwelm and Hagen, but they're still both pretty close together, and all the S-Bahn stations being very close together helped me to think that this particular route is quite cramped in a way. Although it's not as much as Ruhr Sieg Nord, which is a little strange since that has less stations than this one. But either way, this multiple unit is certain, at least in my experience, is a lot easier to drive than the BR143. And from memory, I'm pretty sure that this Rhein-Ruhr Osten came out before Duisburg to Bochum. Although why the BR422 was included a second time with that other route, I've no idea. Anyway, this is Hagen Wehringhausen, which is, in my opinion, the most unusual station on this route, simply because it's the only one, I'm pretty sure it's the only one on this route that's just got one platform. It's also on a very steep 1 in 33 gradient. But the thing I've found that was trying to stop a train or start a train away from off a steep gradient is to try and apply some power before releasing the brakes so that you don't risk rolling back. Except in this instance that is a little bit difficult because this unit does not have separate throttle and brake controls. Like a lot of EMUs that I've driven in TSW, it's just got the combined throttle and brake lever. Seems like you have to stand in a very specific spot to get that door to close. Yeah, I'm probably going to be a bit more relaxed with this run, even though it's a pretty intensive timetable. And over there, I think that's the line that goes via Wuppertal, but I've probably got that wrong. Either way, I shouldn't really hang around too long, even though I did say I'm going to be a bit more relaxed with this run. I did not realise how quiet this train is when she's idling, but when she starts moving, it's a different story. See what I mean? Anyway, I've just realised I need to take these units' numbers. So I think the unit... Good thing is that you don't have to go through the whole free cam mode in order to... Those sidings, I think, are the ones where the Voslov G6 goes down. Anyway, with this unit at least, you don't need to go through that tedious thing of moving around the 3 cam, or the number 3 camera. And this is difficult, this is harder than I thought. Anyway, at least we did that without breaking the speed limit. Anyway, good thing about this unit is that you don't need to go to that tedious free camera view in order to check the unit numbers. I think the Talent 2s have got that feature as well, and I think... What have we got? I think units 70 and possibly 18. Yeah, I do usually prefer to take the numbers of whatever engine or unit I'm driving, even though I might not mention it in the video. And that's generally because I don't think to do so. Anyway, the next... Ooh, that curve was way too sharp to take it at 80, or take it at an 80k speed limit. That should have been down to 55 or 60, I think. Anyway, we're coming up on Hagen Heubing. I'm pretty sure that when you see the EU together in a German word, then that's like OI, or you pronounce it as if it was like spelled OI. Case in point, Dresden Neustadt. And that's N-E-U-S-T-A-D-T. Now, one thing I remember about this route is like the timings for these S-Bahn services is that at some stations there's a bit of padding built in, as it were, and yet at others there's barely any. So in this instance, at Hagen Heubing, we've got a little bit of time to go and have a butcher's round the station, and then look at the sometimes unnatural droning movements of these NPCs. What's that building over there? Oh, it looks like some sort of warehouse, because there's the roller shutter doors out the front and what looks like a van sat there. I wouldn't know what it would be in real life, of course, because I have never been to Germany in real life, let alone the city of Hagen. Now, I do realise that this the DB BR422 is... Why does that say S5? These destination displays on this unit is very confusing. I guess inconsistent is probably a better word. Yeah, so I don't really know what the city is like in real life, but one thing I have seen on this route that is a bit odd is the fact that there's these 4 stations in a row with Gevelsberg in their name, and one of them is called Gevelsberg Hauptbahnhof, but I mean, I would assume it is actually the central station in that town, because I don't know a lot of German, but I do know what Hauptbahnhof translates to. And when you'll see it later, it's probably the smallest Hauptbahnhof I've ever come across. As for the largest, probably either Berlin or Frankfurt am Main. Possibly even Köln, but that's a point. Neither Berlin nor Frankfurt are actually in TSW. In fact, I think the closest that we've probably got to Frankfurt so far is probably Köln to Aachen. Come to think of it, I've noticed that just about every single German route we've had in TSW is electrified, and they all come with like electric trains in some form or another. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I do wish that we had more, or like at least one German route that was like diesel only. And of course there are some German diesels in TSW, but I honestly don't think it's enough. There's still, the German market in this game at least is just, to me, I just feel it's oversaturated with electrics. But of course, on the credit where it's due, there are some German diesels. in the game, like the Vosloch G6 that I mentioned earlier as we left Hagen Wehringhausen. There's also the DB BR422, which you can get either in a red livery as an add-on for Ruhr Sieg Nord, or you can get it in this in an older blue and sort of off-white livery. It's with Nachwerker Dresden. Curiously, that older blue and off-white livery with the BR422 is being included again with the upcoming Dresden to Chemnitz route, which I did talk about in the previous video while I was driving on Ruhr Sieg Nord, so I won't really repeat myself here. But all I will say about Dresden to Chemnitz this time around is that I will hopefully be buying that, or be getting that route, and making some videos about it on launch day. How did I not notice that map before? Anyway, the other notable... yeah, that's what I said I was going to... I wouldn't repeat myself. Although I can't imagine that that many people will watch either this or the previous video, given how well my TSW gameplay videos seem to be doing these days. Even though we're a few seconds early, I'm still going to leave. Not early. Even though I'm pretty sure in real life trains aren't really meant to leave early, and instead they should stick to the advertised departure times as much as possible. Anyway, the next... now I think that was Hagen... I didn't look properly... oh look, there's another train. I didn't look properly in the top corner, the top left corner, but yeah, that was Hagen Westerbauer that we just left, and the next station is Gevelsberg Knapp. I would assume that's a silent K, like it would be in English with words like knife and knee. Speaking of which, why the hell are those words spelt with a K when you don't pronounce the K? Anyone would think that whoever decided the spellings for those words had a grudge against Rogers 242 tender engines from the 1870s, or Hutt Workshops built 484 tender engines from the early 1930s. Right, this is the first of 4 Gevelsberg stations, which is a fascinating sort. What's interesting about, as I showed earlier when I looked at the map view, is that this Rhein-Ruhr-Osten route is interesting because it includes the 2 different routes that you can take to get from Wuppertal to Hagen and vice versa. I'd never noticed that before. Look, destination displays were mounted underneath the footbridge. I've never seen that at a railway station before, be it in real life or in a simulator, although it's debatable. I suppose in some cases it's debatable whether or not TSW can really be called a simulator. Trying to get the stopping point as accurate as I can, and that's bullseye, or at least it would be if I actually opened the doors on the right side. So this is meant to be a tiny first class compartment, I think. Which doesn't make any sense to me because... hold on. Is it just me, or do these supposed first class seats have the same moquette as what this thing labels as coach class? I just realised I have not taken anywhere near as many screenshots as I should be doing, since I need to try and get at least 4 for the thumbnail. That's a good angle. Yeah, blank destination display because, as we saw earlier, it was giving. I couldn't get it to say S8 Mönchengladbach, even though I'm pretty sure it can display that, at least from what I've seen on the AI services. And I apologise if you can hear those cicadas outside, but that's something I think we get quite a lot during the summer in New Zealand, but can't do anything about that, of course. Anyway, the next stop is Gevelsberg Hauptbahnhof. I also just got we've got a drink of water here as well. Don't don't really want to get too thirsty, well, not really thirsty at all. But so, here's a thought. If anyone who is more knowledgeable on the BR422s than I am is watching, then feel free to comment below, like, if these sounds are accurate. Because you would have heard the motor, because it did display the motor sound as we were leaving Hagen Wehringhausen. And yeah, I'm just curious, even though personally I think the BR422 is not really that much of a looker. And yet, I think it's technically part of the same. If I'm not mistaken, it's part of the same. It's very similar to, or part of the same family as, like the BR423 that you would see on S-Bahn services in, like Stuttgart, Frankfurt, Köln, I think. There's another one. Oh yeah, München. And then the BR424, which runs on the S-Bahn Hannover, and the BR425, which is more of a regional unit that you see, especially on Hauptstrecke Rhein-Ruhr, on like the RE11 service, and then also the BR426, which is like the 425, sorry. The 426 is a two-car version of the 425, kind of like how the Class 466 networker in the UK is a two-car version, well, pretty much a two-car version of the Class 465, which is a four-car unit. In case you didn't notice already, these BR422s that we're driving today, they are four-car units as well. But we've got two of them coupled together to make an 8-car train. And that's another decently accurate stop, and this time it's at Gevelsberg Hauptbahnhof. And I know that one thing I've just remembered that's a little silly is that I know that you can do, obviously I know that you can do freight services on this route as well, especially with the MRCE BR185/5 that actually comes with the route. But also you can use other engines from other add-ons, like I think even the BR155, which I got along with Ruhr Sieg Nord, but haven't tried driving it yet. But despite the fact that you can also do the freight services as well as like a little bit of RE4 with like the BR146/2, my preferred service to drive on this route is just the S8 over the full length of the route between Hagen Hauptbahnhof and Wuppertal-Steinbeck, simply because I do generally prefer driving passenger services, and especially in this game. Well, what am I saying? I've never driven a real passenger train. Miniature railways don't count, of course. But I have driven two. Many years ago I did drive two diesel locomotives in real life, which were DFB 7077 and, well, what is now DFB 7077 and DXR 8022. Those are both New Zealand locomotives, I should add. The only foreign engines I've seen are ones in Melbourne, Australia. In particular, like Victorian Railways R-Class 464s, more specifically two. Engine numbers, I think 761 and 711. I dare say any Aussies watching, any Aussie rail fans watching will probably, or might, for all I know, they've probably heard of the Victorian Railways R-Class at the very least. I'm trying to think of other Australian steamers that are reasonably well known besides 3801. That's probably everyone's go-to answer if someone ever asked them what they thought of when their mind went to Australian steam locomotives. Although in my case, I think an Australian design that's just as iconic as the New South Wales 38 class, C38 class, are the narrow gauge Victorian Railways NAs on the Puffing Billy Railway. Especially since I've actually seen those things running, or two of them running at least. Wait, how the hell did I end up talking about Australian steam locomotives when I'm recording a video when I'm driving a German train in TSW2, a game that still hasn't got any Australian content in it, let alone New Zealand stuff. It really does seem like Dovetail are focusing just about all of their efforts on basically almost refusing to shy away from the US, UK and Germany. I get that that's like their core market, but at the same time I still think that TSW really should have more routes from different countries. Like, I mean, I would even give Northern Ireland a pass, because even though that would still be a UK route, at least it's something very different to the likes of, well, just take I guess Manchester to Leeds, or London Victoria to Brighton. In fact, I remember a while ago, I think I put up a suggestion thread on one of the Dovetail Live forums, suggesting that someone make the line between Portadown and Bangor that's Bangor for TSW. It's about 42 miles long, and it would obviously involve going through the city of Belfast, which is basically the capital of Northern Ireland, even though of course the capital of the UK as a whole is London. That'd make for a decent screenshot, I think. Except that shadow of the catenary mast is in the way, but can't really do anything about that. Yeah, look, that AI train's got the right destination display as an S8 service to Hagen Hauptbahnhof, but I can't really understand why I haven't been able to, or why ever since I got Duisburg to Bochum, that I haven't been able to get the right destination display when I'm driving the BR422 on Wuppertal to Hagen. This is probably not going to be particularly effective, but might as well try it again. I don't know what that translates to. That's RB48, which is a service that you can drive a small part of with this train. So in that sense, that destination is right. That's S5. Oh, there's S8 to Mönchengladbach. But what's the bet? That'll only be for the rear unit. Yep, thought so. Oh well, it's better than nothing. And I prefer not to try and faff around to try and get the destination display as absolutely accurate. Wow, this is not easy trying to get the right framing for a screenshot along here. Oh, we just went through did we just go through a crossover? Looks like it. Either that or I've just lost my foot, with no pun intended, I've lost track of where I am. Oh, that was just an overbridge. That's right, there's this, I've just remembered that there's this tunnel between Gevelsberg West and Schwelm. This is almost, I would even go so far as to say it's kind of a futuristic tunnel, this one. At least you can, well, it's not like the Bakerloo line, on which you can't go to an external view when you're in the tunnel. But I'm just a bit curious that you can clearly do an external view when you're in this tunnel. Actually, come to think of it, with the Bakerloo line, those tunnels are so small that it'd be impossible to really get any decent external shots, aside from when you stopped at stations like Piccadilly Circus and you can nip out from the cab and have a very quick look around the platform. Although I can't imagine real underground drivers do that. Come to think of it, I can't imagine any real train drivers would. Well, especially for passenger services like the German S-Bahn would just randomly nip out onto the platform when they're stopped at a station. From what I gather, a lot of the timetables, especially on S-Bahn München S3 I've seen with the BR423, the timetable is pretty tight. There's not a lot of padding. Meaning that when you can't really hang around at stations for too long, if at all. It's strange, I wonder why you went through that random crossover. Either way, just before we get to Schwelm, and there's a plane outside. It's like, sometimes forget that my house is actually right under a decently busy air corridor. Tauranga is a fairly important regional centre in New Zealand, and I think it's got direct flights to like Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, possibly even Dunedin. I'm not sure exactly. Oh, this one in 33. That's the same grade that we were on, or we were going uphill on that same severity of a gradient at Hagen Wehringhausen. And yeah, with these flyovers just past, or rather dive unders, just before Schwelm, this is where we rejoin the, what I'm not sure, I suppose you could call it fast lines, where in that other train there with the Doppelstockwagen coaches and what looks like a BR146, that I think is RE4 going from Dortmund to Aachen. I remember a couple of times when I've driven eastbound S8 services on this route out of Wuppertal. You almost race the RE4 between Wuppertal Hauptbahnhof and here at Schwelm. And yeah, the next station, which is Schwelm West, is a pretty basic affair because it's just got a simple island platform and not really anything else. Reminds me of some of the, I guess, regional stations that you see on Hauptstrecke München to Augsburg once you get past Mammendorf, which is that's the end of the S-Bahn section. Right, obviously can't hang around too long, if at all. Yeah, I might as well try to do a somewhat fancy departure shot here. And then after we get past Schwelm West, we've only got, well now I think we've got about 7 stations left before we end our journey. I find it a bit disappointing that the western end of this route is just Wuppertal-Steinbeck. They could have, I reckon Dovetail could have continued it further west to Wuppertal-Vollwinkel at the very least. I am going way too fast, just realised, but at least this train has pretty good brakes, although I can't imagine they'd be this powerful in real life. These crazy good brakes on the 422 have certainly helped me when I've tried driving it on between Duisburg and Bochum, because the timetable on there is even tighter than this one. And it's only barely possible to run exactly to time when you're doing it, when you're taking a BR422 on that other route. The other thing I've just remembered is that this train can also be seen on the representing S19 services on Schnellfahrstrecke Köln to Aachen. Although from what I understand, in real life they actually use BR423s on that line. So I'm not entirely sure why they just use the BR422 instead. Or I'm guessing it might have been before München to Augsburg actually came out, but I'm not sure. Hello. Oh, it's that same engine and coaches that we saw back at Schwelm. I can't imagine we'll have any chance of overtaking that lot, since we're on the local service. and the RE4 skips quite a few stations. In fact, I think between Wuppertal and Hagen, the service only stops at I think Wuppertal-Barmen, Wuppertal-Oberbarmen, Schwelm Wuppertal, and then Hagen Hauptbahnhof. And I don't know for certain, but I would assume that RE4 doesn't take the route down towards Finnentrop. I think the passenger service down that way is like RE16. At least that's what I saw earlier this morning when I was driving the BR143. Hang about, that green wall on the side there, is that a sound barrier? I'm not sure. Reminds me of the southern end of the rapid transit route, around just north of Magdeburg, Schwitz. Off to the right there, I think that's Langerfeld Yard, which makes sense because we're approaching Wuppertal Langerfeld station. I always find that I seem to have trouble with this particular station, like stopping in the right place. I'm not entirely sure why. Since I never really seem to have any major issues with stopping this train in the right place at any other stations. It's just this one. And then the next station after this is Wuppertal Oberbarmen, which is quite notable because it's also the eastern terminus of the world famous Wuppertal-Steinbeck, or suspended monorail, which I think I honestly think the way Dovetail replicated the Schwebebahn is awful. Because on the one hand, it's good that they actually bothered. Well, you couldn't really make a route about Wuppertal without at least modelling the Schwebebahn track. But I just think the way they represented the actual trains is terrible. Because for some reason, in this game, they're depicted as just being one-car units, which is completely inaccurate to the real thing. Not to mention that in this game, at least, they're shown in all kinds of random colours, whereas I'm pretty sure the real, I think is it GTW15 stock on the real Schwebebahn? I think they're all like turquoise or something, or like very light blue. Not to mention that I think the real thing, I'm pretty sure the real thing is like two-car units with a little, like another little section in the middle, a bit like what you see with trams, or modern trams rather. One other thing I know about the Schwebebahn trains is that they only have a cab at one end. And the reason why they're designed that way is because the way the Schwebebahn track is laid out is it's essentially a double track route for its entire length from Wuppertal Oberbarmen through to Vovinkel, and there's very sharply curved turning loops at each end of the line. And so the trains don't really need to go into a reversing siding. And yeah, just on the right there is the Schwebebahn station. I'll try to show a closer look of Dovetail's half-assed efforts to represent the trains themselves. If anything, I reckon they should have made the Schwebebahn fully drivable and incorporated that into this route instead of just having like a separate Schwebebahn add-on. I'm not saying that Rhein-Ruhr Osten is a bad route overall, but I just think it would have been an awful lot better had Dovetail actually made the Schwebebahn drivable. And here we are at Wuppertal Oberbarmen. What is Bauhaus? If I've pronounced that right. I don't know for certain, but I think I saw in Google Images, or Google Maps rather, that it's some kind of hardware store. Kind of like, well, I think in New Zealand, our sort of hardware stores that we've got are like Mitre 10, Bunnings, like Extension Bunnings Warehouse, and obviously Hammer Hardware. Although those stores don't really matter to me personally, because I never really go shopping at hardware stores. I mean, look at this. That is more or less a semi-accurate colour for these trains, but that still looks more like grey than anything else. One thing I remember from playing Schwelm Simulator 2013 many years ago is that I think just around here, I'm pretty sure just around here in real life, there's a station called Wuppertal, where just as the main line curves away, where just as the Schwelm curves away from the main line to follow the course of the River Wupper, I'm pretty sure there is a station there where you can look out and see the main line. And as I said, I'm pretty damn sure that that station is called Wuppertal. But do correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't been able to play that game for years, and I don't even know if it's available anymore. Or was it... might have got the positioning of the station wrong. That's one thing about the Schwelm is that it's not like... in a way, it's not like a lot of other commuter lines where they sometimes have services terminating early at other stations rather than going the full length. And the reason why the Schwelm can't do that is because there's only the only turning loops for the trains are at each end of the line. So I think in the case of the Schwelm, all the services would just be full-length runs from Fulvinkel to Oberbarmen as eastbound, and then Oberbarmen back to Fulvinkel as the westbound. I see that RE4 is leaving just as we're arriving. I think there's just about 3 more stations to go before we get to Steinbeck. So haven't got that long to go. Pretty sure this run, despite having a lot more station stops, is actually shorter than, in terms of the duration, than going from Hagen down to Finnentrop. I think next time I might drive. Next time I do a run on Ruhr Sieg Nord, it might be with a freight engine like the BR155. So I imagine that one being quite a challenge, because the 155 is certainly a bit of an older design, although I don't know exactly when it was built. The same goes for this BR422 here. I may be able to tell, or like, I'm reasonably familiar with a lot of different types of German locomotives and multiple units, but I know nothing about their history. So again, if anyone who is more knowledgeable on these 422s is watching, and if you, feel free to leave a comment explaining more about the history of these trains. I think I would certainly appreciate it, and I dare say others might appreciate it as well. Anyway, the next stop is Wuppertal Unterbarmen. I dare say this city would probably be... I think in real life Wuppertal is served by buses as well. And I don't know for certain, but I would assume that just about every railway station has got good bus connections. There's a BR143. I'd hazard a guess and say that train that just passed going the other way is an RE4 heading to Dortmund. I think that version of the 143 is probably the one from Ruhr Sieg Nord. Because even though I've had the 143 with Nachwirke Dresden for a while, I don't think I've been able to drive it on this route until today. Although, yeah, I think... No, although in saying that, I'm pretty sure that the version we just saw is the one from Ruhr Sieg Nord. Weirdly, I found that one a lot easier to drive than the Nachwirke Dresden version, even though it's aesthetically, or even though the two versions are aesthetically identical. But although maybe it's just that I've somehow gotten a lot better at driving the 143 than I thought. Sometimes my memory is completely shot. And this is the third to last stop for our journey today. But yeah, as I was saying earlier, I think that even though this route for the most part is pretty good, it suffers from the same problem that so many other TSW routes have, and that it's just far too short. And I really do think that at the very least should have continued further west to Wuppertal Vorwinkel, or heck, maybe even all the way to Köln, or have some way of linking up like Köln to Aachen with Duisburg to Bochum, or like link Duisburg to Bochum with Wuppertal to Hagen. Either way, I just think that altogether, especially this one in Duisburg to Bochum, I just think altogether they're just too short. Speed limit going down to 90, and then very soon after going down to 60. Yeah, you certainly can't go very fast on it, or on average you can't really go very fast along this route. I think generally the average speed is probably only about 80 kilometers an hour, unless you're going by the fast lines, but I don't remember what the speed limits are on that side of the route, since I generally never drive on it. Although I think there was one time where I drove the Vosloch G6 along there. It was the Schwelm again, which is no surprise considering we're approaching Wuppertal Hauptbahnhof, where there is of course another direct interchange with the Schwelm. Now, from what I've seen in real life, or from real life footage that I've seen on YouTube, the railway through Wuppertal isn't just served by these red Deutsche Bahn trains, but also like the white and blue Talent 2s that belong to that are used by National Express. So I'm pretty sure in real life those are the units that run the RE4. So I reckon that that's another train I certainly wouldn't mind seeing in TSW is the National Express Talent 2, which could be done as an add-on for Rhein-Ruhr Osten here, and I think it would certainly make the route look a lot more realistic. Of course, in real life you do obviously just get the S-Bahn trains through here as well. Wait, what engine is on? Ah, it's 146. Oh, those people cleared out of this first class compartment pretty quickly. That's a point. This train is very empty. Surely it would. Obviously, I've never seen what it's like in real life, but surely for an S-Bahn train, it would never be this empty in real life. But I'm not sure why it's so empty in the game. But probably just, presumably, it's just dovetailing their dodgy scripting. Anyway, the next station is Wuppertal-Steinbeck, which is where we usually end our run today. This obviously in the AI would take over, but in real life I imagine that they would just presumably do the entire S8 service from Hagen Hauptbahnhof to Mönchengladbach without changing drivers. And that solitary BR422 there, I think that'll be the RB48 from Köln to Wuppertal Oberbarmen. There's a small freight yard here, if memory serves. Though I don't remember if there are any services available in timetable mode where you can actually drive or do some shunting in that yard. Although, yeah, there's at least one of the Vosloch G6 scenarios where you do start here at Steinbeck, and then I think you have to go all the way to the yard just on the northern side of, or just on the far side of Hagen Hauptbahnhof, and then you have to shunt some wagons away into the sidings. Well, we're 3 minutes late, but I suppose it's better late than never. Actually, I'll just do one last blast on the horn if I can find it. And yeah, this has been another attempt of mine to drive a DB BR422 over the full length of the Rhein-Ruhr-Osten route. As I said near the start, this was a direct continuation of the previous video where I drove the BR143 along Ruhr Sieg Nord. And on that note, I will end the video here. Until next time, I thank you very much for watching.